Greetings listeners and welcome to the Brain Booster channel. Today, we will be discussing the current state of Yemen, a country located in the Middle East, with its capital city being Sana'a and a population of approximately 29 million people. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform our listeners about the current humanitarian and economic situation in Yemen and the impact it has on its citizens. In this episode, we will start with a brief historical context, followed by a discussion of the humanitarian crisis, the economic landscape, and the political landscape of Yemen. So, make yourself comfortable and stay with us until the end of this podcast as we dive into the current state of Yemen. In this section, we will be discussing the brief history of Yemen. Yemen has a rich history that dates back thousands of years, with ancient kingdoms and civilizations having flourished in the region. In the 19th century, Yemen was divided into two regions, the north and the south. The north became part of the Ottoman Empire, while the south became a British protectorate. In the mid-20th century, both North and South Yemen gained independence and merged to form the Republic of Yemen in 1990. However, this unity was short-lived, and by 1994, the country descended into a civil war, with the North and South battling for control. The conflict was eventually resolved, but tensions between the two regions remained high. In recent years, Yemen has faced another conflict, this time fueled by a combination of political, economic, and social factors. The conflict escalated into a full-blown war in 2015, with various domestic and regional actors becoming involved. Today, Yemen continues to face a humanitarian crisis, with millions of people in need of assistance and the economy in shambles. In the next sections, we will be discussing the current situation in more detail. Before the conflict in Yemen escalated in 2015, the country was facing a number of political and economic challenges. Politically, the country was in a state of transition, with a newly elected government trying to establish itself and address the demands of its citizens. Economically, Yemen was facing a number of challenges, including a high unemployment rate, poverty, and a lack of basic services such as healthcare and education. The country was heavily dependent on oil exports, which were declining, leading to a decrease in government revenue. Additionally, Yemen was grappling with a number of social issues, including widespread corruption, tribal rivalries, and food insecurity. These factors, combined with the lack of effective governance, set the stage for the conflict that would later erupt in 2015. The conflict in Yemen began in 2015, after a popular uprising against the government of President Abdrabbuh Mansour Hadi. The uprising was fueled by widespread anger at the government's inability to address the country's political, economic, and social challenges. In response to the unrest, Houthi rebels, a group from the north of the country, took control of the capital city of Sana'a and other key areas. President Hadi fled the country, and the rebels declared themselves in control of the government. This sparked a military intervention led by a coalition of Arab states, with the goal of restoring the government of President Hadi. The conflict quickly escalated, with the coalition launching airstrikes and ground assaults on Houthi positions. The Houthis, in turn, responded with military action, including attacks on coalition forces and targeting of civilians. Over the years, the conflict has become more complex, with various regional and international actors becoming involved and various factions vying for power and control. The conflict has had devastating consequences for the people of Yemen, with civilians bearing the brunt of the violence and suffering from widespread hunger, disease, and displacement. In the conflict in Yemen, there are several key contributors that play a role in the ongoing violence and instability. These include the Houthi rebels, who took control of the government in 2015 and are seen as the main adversary of the coalition forces. On the other side is the government of President Hadi, which is the internationally recognized government of Yemen and is supported by the coalition forces. The coalition is led by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and includes other Arab states. The conflict has also drawn in regional actors, including Iran, which is believed to be providing support to the Houthis, and other international actors, such as the United States and the United Kingdom, which are providing military and logistical support to the coalition. In addition to the conflict between the Houthis and the government, there are also various other factions operating within the country, including Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who have taken advantage of the instability to expand their presence and carry out attacks. The conflict has had devastating consequences for the people of Yemen, with civilians facing widespread hunger, disease, and displacement. The United Nations has declared the situation in Yemen to be the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The conflict in Yemen has had a devastating impact on the civilian population, leading to one of the largest humanitarian crises in the world. The crisis affects millions of people, with millions of people facing severe food insecurity, a lack of access to clean water and basic healthcare, and widespread disease. According to the United Nations, more than 24 million people, or 80% of the population, require humanitarian assistance. This includes over 12 million children, who are in dire need of food, clean water, and medical care. The conflict has also led to the displacement of millions of people, with over 3 million people forced to flee their homes and communities. In addition to the immediate humanitarian needs, the crisis has also had long-term consequences for the people of Yemen. For example, children are suffering from malnutrition, which can have lifelong effects on their health and development. The lack of access to healthcare has also led to outbreaks of diseases such as cholera, which have spread rapidly due to the lack of clean water and adequate sanitation. The conflict has also had a severe impact on the economy, with businesses closing, jobs disappearing, and prices for basic goods skyrocketing, making it difficult for people to afford the basic necessities of life. The conflict in Yemen has had a devastating impact on civilians, leading to widespread displacement, food insecurity, and lack of access to basic services. Displacement: over 3 million people have been forced to flee their homes and communities due to the conflict. This has created a massive displacement crisis, with people living in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, lacking basic necessities such as food, clean water, and medical care. Food insecurity: the conflict has disrupted agriculture and trade, leading to severe food shortages across the country. According to the United Nations, over 16 million people are facing severe food insecurity, with millions of people on the brink of famine. This is particularly devastating for children, as malnutrition can have lifelong effects on their health and development. Lack of access to basic services: the conflict has also disrupted access to basic services, such as healthcare, clean water, and sanitation. This has led to outbreaks of diseases such as cholera, which have spread rapidly due to the lack of clean water and adequate sanitation. The lack of access to healthcare has also had severe consequences, with millions of people unable to access basic medical care when they need it. Overall, the conflict in Yemen has had a devastating impact on the civilian population, and it is vital that the international community takes action to address this humanitarian crisis and support the people of Yemen. Aid organizations have been working tirelessly to respond to the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, but they face significant challenges in doing so. The first challenge is access. The conflict has made it difficult for aid organizations to reach those in need, with fighting and insecurity affecting access to certain areas. Aid organizations also face logistical challenges, such as the limited availability of transport and the high cost of importing supplies into the country. Another challenge is funding. The humanitarian crisis in Yemen is one of the largest and most underfunded in the world, with only a fraction of the funds required to meet the needs of those affected by the conflict. This lack of funding limits the ability of aid organizations to respond effectively to the crisis, and forces them to prioritize assistance to those most in need. Aid organizations are also facing operational challenges, such as limited capacity and the need for coordination among multiple actors. With so many organizations working in the same area, it is crucial to ensure that their efforts are well coordinated and that resources are used effectively. Despite these challenges, aid organizations continue to play a vital role in responding to the crisis in Yemen. They are providing essential assistance, such as food, clean water, and medical care, to those most in need. They are also working to address the root causes of the crisis, such as displacement and food insecurity, and to support the recovery and long-term development of communities affected by the conflict. Overall, the role of aid organizations in responding to the crisis in Yemen is crucial, and it is important that the international community supports their efforts and provides the funding and resources necessary to respond effectively to this humanitarian crisis. The current state of the Yemeni economy is dire, with years of conflict and instability taking a heavy toll. The conflict has disrupted trade and commerce, leading to a decline in economic activity and a decline in the standard of living for the population. Inflation has also skyrocketed, with prices for basic goods and services rising dramatically. This has made it difficult for people to afford the things they need to survive, leading to widespread poverty and hunger. The conflict has also disrupted the country's infrastructure, with roads, bridges, and buildings being destroyed. This has made it difficult for businesses to operate and for people to access the goods and services they need. The decline in economic activity has also led to high levels of unemployment, with millions of people unable to find work. This has had a devastating impact on families and communities, with many people struggling to make ends meet. Overall, the current state of the Yemeni economy is dire, and it will take significant investment and support to help the country recover. Addressing the conflict and ensuring stability is essential to rebuilding the economy and improving the standard of living for the population. The political landscape in Yemen is complex, with multiple key political actors pursuing a range of objectives. These actors include the Yemeni government, the Houthi rebels, separatist groups, and a range of armed groups. The Yemeni government, backed by a coalition of Arab states, seeks to regain control of the country and restore stability. The Houthi rebels, on the other hand, seek greater autonomy and representation in the government. Separatist groups seek greater autonomy for their regions, while armed groups pursue a range of objectives, including control of territory and resources. In recent years, there have been various peace efforts aimed at resolving the conflict in Yemen. These efforts have included negotiations, ceasefires, and confidence-building measures. However, these efforts have failed to produce a lasting peace, and the conflict continues. The conflict in Yemen has significant regional implications, with neighboring countries, such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, playing key roles. Saudi Arabia and its coalition partners have supported the Yemeni government, while Iran has provided support to the Houthi rebels. This has created a complex regional dynamic, with different actors pursuing their own interests and influencing the conflict in different ways. In conclusion, the political landscape in Yemen is complex, with a range of actors pursuing different objectives. Despite various peace efforts, the conflict continues, and its resolution will require the cooperation and engagement of all parties, as well as support from regional actors. In conclusion, we have covered a wide range of topics related to the situation in Yemen. From its geographical location and history, to the current state of the economy and the humanitarian crisis, we have explored the key issues facing the country. In summary, Yemen is a country located in the Middle East, with a population of over 29 million people. The conflict in Yemen began in 2014, and has since escalated into a full-blown humanitarian crisis, with widespread displacement, food insecurity, and limited access to basic services. The conflict has also had a significant impact on the Yemeni economy, which is facing a range of challenges, including declining resources, inflation, and a lack of investment. In terms of the political landscape, the conflict in Yemen is driven by a range of key political actors, each with their own objectives and interests. Efforts to bring about a lasting peace have so far been unsuccessful, and the regional implications of the conflict have added to the complexity of the situation. In terms of the future, the prospects for peace and stability in Yemen remain uncertain. The situation is complex, and resolving the conflict will require the cooperation and engagement of all parties, as well as support from regional actors. However, it is clear that the conflict has had a devastating impact on the people of Yemen, and that much work needs to be done to bring about lasting peace and stability in the country. In conclusion, we hope that this episode has provided you with a deeper understanding of the situation in Yemen, and that you will continue to follow the situation in this important and troubled country. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again soon on the Brain Booster channel.